प्रोग्राम के सेगमेंट में मुझे ज्वाइन कर रहे हैं माइकल कुगलमैन वाशिंगटन डीसी से। माइकल कुगलमैन डिप्टी डायरेक्टर हैं एशिया प्रोग्राम साउथ एशिया के और सीनियर एसोसिएट हैं विल्सन सेंटर के ऊपर और स्पेशलाइज करते हैं पाकिस्तान, इंडिया, अफगानिस्तान और बांग्लादेश के मामलात के ऊपर। आज इस खुसूसी मौजू के ऊपर हमने उन्हें प्रोग्राम में दावत दी है। माइकल, थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर ज्वाइनिंग इन एंड आई रियली अप्रिशिएट द टाइम दैट यू हैव टेकन आउट फॉर अस। Michael, I've been following your tweets. I mean, you have analyzed the entire situation. Now, a year on, it's been over a year now since last 5th August 2019. What do you think? Can India ever win the trust of Kashmiri people, particularly what they have done to them after the revocation of the special status?
Well, I think it's highly unlikely that we could look at the notion of India earning the trust of Kashmiris, given all that's happened, certainly well before the events of August 5, 2019, but certainly after what happened with the revocation of its autonomy. You know, to me, as an outside analyst, it seems quite simple that, you have large numbers of people, particularly Kashmiris living in the Kashmir Valley, who never wanted to be forced to become a part of a country, to formally become part of a country that they have long despised. And I don't want to generalize for sure. There could be parts of the region, if you look at Jammu, for example, where there may not be quite as much anger at Indians. But looking particularly at Jammu and at the Kashmir Valley, people there that have lived under what they would consider occupation for many years, and the indignities and the embarrassments and the lack of dignities that they've had to experience for so long. The idea of India suddenly coming in and winning hearts and minds, to me, it seems hopelessly naive.
All right, and in the past 1 year, ever since 5th of August 2019, President Trump has offered twice to mediate between India and Pakistan, particularly on this issue. Why do you think it never materialized?
Well, it's interesting. You're right. President Trump did offer multiple times to mediate on Kashmir, but I would actually argue that it was not really an offer. And I say that because President Trump was very specific. He said that he would be happy to mediate the Kashmir issue if asked by both sides, both Pakistan and India. And you and I both know that India is not going to ever ask the U.S. or any third party to try to come in and mediate. So in that sense, I don't consider it to be a formal mediation offer. I consider it to be something that was meant to essentially make a gesture to Pakistan to say, okay, we're aware of how serious this problem is. We'd be happy to mediate if you'd like us to. But at the same time, it's a gesture toward India by essentially making it clear to India that it's not really a serious offer. So in that sense, I'm not really surprised that nothing has come of this. President Trump trying to please both sides, and there wasn't much that was serious about it in my view.
Right. How does the world see it now, Michael? I mean, you've been analyzing the entire situation. Kashmiri people, they have suffered, particularly after 5th of August 2019. The entire area has been under a lockdown. Does the world see it that way? Do they actually think that it's not only the loss of human lives, but also they've taken the economic hit as well? So does the world see it that way?
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that ever since the immediate weeks after the revocation of Article 370, the world has gone fairly quiet on the Kashmir issue. You really don't hear as much attention and criticism from key capitals as much as you were, say in August and September of 2019. And the sad truth of it is that you talk about the human rights violations in Kashmir, you talk about the very troubling things that are happening. I think for so many people and governments around the world, we live in a terrible world right now where there are human rights violations everywhere. And I think it takes a lot for a critical mass of the international community to be woken up to the reality of the seriousness of what's going on in Kashmir, just because concerns about human rights issues are not new, because they happen everywhere. I think it's only when the conversation turns to issues of nuclear stability and the security threat posed by this very difficult Kashmir problem and the risks that poses to India-Pakistan relations and how it heightens the potential possibility of some type of conflict. That's when I think the world starts to pay attention a bit more. But even with that, there's a lot going on in the world now. There's a lot of conflict, a lot of risk for conflict. And the sad truth of it is that much of the world has really moved on. I would argue as well that much of the world tends to look at the Kashmir issue in the way that India would like it to look at the issue, as a bilateral or internal matter to be dealt with only by India and Pakistan. And you have so many countries around the world that view India as an important geopolitical player, as an important market, and there's a desire not to rock the boat and not to risk antagonizing India by trying to jump in and offer to mediate or to make a lot of noise about what's happening. You could argue that's not a good idea, that it's misguided, but this is sadly the reality of how the world works these days.
That's the sad part of it. Towards the very end, Michael, I would want you to analyze, what do you think in Pakistan there is a growing sense that this year the session in UNSC is going to be decisive, it's going to make a difference, but do you think anything happening that way, or is it going to be normal, just another session?
Well, I would argue if there was going to be a decisive session on Kashmir at the UN, it would have been last year, because, last year's session happened just a few weeks after India made the move. Kashmir was getting all kinds of global attention at that point, and yet not all that much happened. There were, of course, as I understand it, several meetings on Kashmir that China helped arrange at the UN Security Council later last year, but nothing really happened beyond that. So I imagine that Kashmir will come up. Certainly Pakistan will bring it up this year. Perhaps several countries, China, perhaps one or two others will as well. But I don't necessarily see this being a pivotal session, even though I'm quite sure that Islamabad and the Pakistani government will try to deliver as forceful a message as possible about the world's need to pay a lot more attention to Kashmir than it has been over the last few months.
All right, Michael Kugelman, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks.
आज आपने देखा, हमने कोशिश की तमाम पहलुओं को आपके सामने रखें. इसका फीडबैक आप ही देंगे. प्रोग्राम देखने का बहुत शुक्रिया. अल्लाह हाफिज़.